the Jim Heath Podcast. Today, Jim talks with Dr. Larry Sabato from the University of Virginia about his electoral map forecast.
Larry, good to see you.
Nice to see you too, Jim.
You know what? I started back in high school. I was a political geek, and I remember my first electoral college map that I paid attention to was 1984. Could you just explain to everybody right at the top here why in 2024, 40 years later, we are not going to see the same type of electoral college map that we saw for Ronald Reagan back then? What happened?
Yeah, good question. In my lifetime, we had landslides, well, two of them for Eisenhower, but the biggest for Lyndon Johnson in 64, then Richard Nixon in 72, and then Ronald Reagan in 1984, and semi-landslide for George H.W. Bush in 88. And that pretty much has been it. And the reason is because increasingly over the past 4 or 5 decades, we have seen a polarization of parties and partisan identity. And it is much more difficult today to get people to ticket split, to change sides. If they're a Democrat, to try and get them to vote Republican and the reverse. Frequently in the 60s and particularly the 70s, most people, most voters would vote for some Democrats and some Republicans on the same ballot. Today, I would say a large majority, easily 80, 85%, maybe it's higher than that, will start at the top of their ballot and they will stay in the same party column all the way to the bottom, from the White House to the courthouse. So it is about the ideological polarization of the parties, which has produced partisan polarization so that your party is part of your core. It's at your core. And everything that comes into you about politics comes through that prism.
Yeah, I just wanted to put that at the top because so often on these videos that I put on the channel, there's always comments that, well, that's how the map's going to look this year. In particular, I've got Peter Jennings and David Brinkley doing the call, all of the states from 1984, and a lot of the comments are, well, that's the way the map's going to look this year, one way or the other. Like, no, that is not how the map is going to look. So your map, ours are different just a little bit. But your map right now, you have President Biden at 260 electoral votes. You have Donald Trump at 235. You have what I call the big four states on your map that are completely undecided at this point. They add up to 43 electoral votes. So even though on your map, Joe Biden is 10 electoral votes away, in theory, if Trump runs the table and takes your 4 undecided states, he wins with 278 electoral votes. So both of these candidates are within the margin of error.
They absolutely are, at least starting out. You never know in which direction a campaign is going to go, although I think we've long exceeded that era of landslides. So it will be, relatively close in historical terms, no matter what happens during the campaign. But Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin are the big four in our opinion. But right below them, just few degrees below them, Pennsylvania, Michigan, in fact, especially after what's happened in the Middle East and the reaction domestically, New Hampshire, although that leans Democratic, so does Pennsylvania. North Carolina, as always, leans Republican, but it doesn't lean very much. I mean, it's always a couple of percent. So you have to be aware that states that you have come to believe are in one party's column can switch as long as they're competitive and they're within 3, 4, 5 points. You can see a switch if there's a strong trend in the fall. We're not there yet, so I don't know.
Yeah, my map from last month, I agree with you completely on Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin, and I have Nevada as number 6, but my top 5 include Pennsylvania and Michigan. I agree with you that I think as it looks right now, all indicators are that Biden is going to have an easier time in Pennsylvania. So I want to really dig deep into Michigan because I still haven't read, just based on the data that we're seeing right now. My gut intuition is that the coalition that supported Biden in 2020 will be back again, but it's, that's just a kind of a gut intuition because there are indications that the Muslim community, which is so important, is not with him right now. And he's got to energize that college support that is not with him right now. I mean, Michigan Can we agree Michigan might be the biggest one, at least, that's completely up in the air right now?
Yes, that would be my choice. I saw an analysis recently, national analysis by a very good person working with others, saying the state that really matters, the state that will be the fulcrum that determines the election, is Pennsylvania. No, I don't really think so this year. I'm with you on that. If anybody has an edge there, it would be Biden. And if Biden has a special edge anywhere other than Delaware, it would be Pennsylvania.
Agreed.
So yes, Michigan, I think, is a place where Democrats are going to have to work every single day to pull it back by a small margin if they can. Some of this depends on the progress or lack of progress in the Middle East. If this war is still going on in the fall, and who would bet against that?
Right.
Given
Yeah.
given the figures involved, the people involved, that's going to be even tougher for Biden to carry, and he has to worry about losing Michigan and then ending up losing the ones that are really, really close, the Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin quartet.
Yeah, then he's done.
He's
The
finished.
regular factors that we've looked at in every election cycle for so long, the economy is always at the top of that list. That had favored Trump, I think, pretty much all of 2023. But now we're seeing some real data that the economy people could be feeling more confident and feeling better by summer. Inflation coming down, perhaps prices coming down, unemployment's at a record low. Interest rates could be cut once or twice before we get to November. Biden has to sell that and connect himself to it, which he's not done a very good job, and Democrats haven't done a very good job, in my opinion. However, the economy is always the ace in the hand, and that could go Biden's way and help him in states like Michigan.
Yeah, that's what they're counting on and hoping on, but it doesn't just happen. If you look at historical examples, the system can set you up so that it leans that way. But it's up to you and your operatives, as you said, to make that connection with the individual. And it's tougher when you have, food prices with cumulative inflation that makes many people spend double what they were spending 4 years ago to get essentially the same goods, or to modify their diet so that they're eating less well than they once were. Food matters more than anything in the calculus of inflation. It's not, rent, which is important. It's not gas, which is important, and so on. It's food. And that's where I think the Biden people really need to focus, and they need to do what they can. And there are ways they can do it to lower the price of some commodities. It's not easy to do it, but it's possible. And certainly other presidents have done it. Nixon worked hard on that in 1972, and he did win 49 states. So, on the whole, I would say the economy could be the factor, the giant factor that pushes this more toward Biden.
And that is so
But there's go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, that is so well said, the food, because in my mind, until this conversation, gas, people, what they pay at the pump, and it looked like Biden. I mean, he's done more oil production. He doesn't talk about it. Republicans certainly don't acknowledge it, but there's more oil production domestically than ever before in history. So he's got those gas prices under control. But you're right, food prices, what the suburban mom is paying at the grocery this fall, is going to help to a large degree set the mood of the electorate.
Absolutely. And there's so much discussion about age. And I'm not saying it's not important. Of course, it should be important. But both of them are way up there. I say that as somebody in my 70s, so don't call me ageist. But, for the presidency, that's pretty old. But age is a substitute, in a way, a public substitute for discussing some of the other issues, including immigration, including crime, and certainly inflation and the economy generally. And so it's a placeholder. Age is discussed when people, maybe you don't want to get into the details on some of the other key issues. So if they want to overcome the age problem, really both of them, but particularly Biden, they ought to be focusing on concrete differences they can make in daily life. And they have made that in gas. The majority of the states have gas prices under $3 now, which a lot of people never thought they'd see by election day. Well, it's happened. but they haven't done very well on food. I mean, it's just leveled off. It's leveled off at an enormously high rate.
Do you think the president, are the phone calls that can be made? I mean, to encourage, well, you need to encourage that across, I guess, the entire supply chain there.
Well,
But
there
I
are
mean, he
things.
could put pressure on somebody.
Sure. Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying on certain commodities. And look, people don't expect the prices to fall on everything, but they're going to notice if prices fall on milk and cheese and eggs
Bread.
and bread. They're going to notice things like that. So there are things the president can do, and they might want to start doing them. I know that it's unpleasant. Sometimes there are economic reactions to that kind of manipulation, but it tends to happen the year after the election.
Right.
That was
A
also
little
true
late.
of Nixon.
George Bush
Yeah,
learned that certainly
that's
in
right, George. But well,
1992.
Nixon saw it too in 73 and 74, but the election was in November 72.
Right. Right. I want to talk about the irregular factors, which is something new because we usually chat about the regular factors, the economy and what's going on in Israel and Iran and other things. But I mean, Donald Trump's court cases, the polls I'm seeing from independents, if he's convicted of any of these, if he's found guilty of any of these, independents leave him to a significant degree. And we go back to those 5, 6 states that are truly undecided at this point. I mean, that could tip things. So what's your gut intuition or what's your feeling on how that's going to play out?
My gut intuition is that as long as we actually have a trial completed, if Trump is found guilty, which, let's be honest, is likely in at least some of these counts, I think it will have a real impact on two groups. Because Democrats are already with Biden and they're going to continue to be. Independents, and most independents actually lean toward one party or another, but it's the lean Republicans who might switch, at least some percentage of them. And then the hardcore independents, which are a minority of independents, they still amount to 4, 5, 6% of the electorate. Well, hey, that's the election. If even you get a 60-40 split in that 4 to 6%.
Yeah, certainly
And
when you
the
look at
other,
states like Georgia and Arizona.
yeah, Georgia and Arizona would be perfect examples. Uh, Also, the what's interesting to me about the court cases is that if you have a definitive verdict with the jury, much more so than the judge, but the jury coming back and saying strongly, maybe in post trial interviews, really condemning what Trump did, that's going to have an effect on people. What judges say, it's important, but that's for the elites that do cable news. They're always very impressed by what a judge says. What average people are impressed by is what jury members say. That's what they listen to because that's them. That's them. The juries represent them. So I think all of that can be critical, and it only takes a point or two. And let's remember, Nikki Haley has done poorly, and she's certainly not going to be the Republican nominee. But she's proven that 20 to 25% of the Republican Party that doesn't like Trump is still willing to vote against him. And just because they're Republicans normally doesn't mean they will all go back to Trump in a general election. So that's another pocket of votes that Trump could lose and Biden could win.
Larry, last question. The time that we have together today, it's February 2023. We still have a long way to go. But I mean, looking that far down the line to the election, whose shoes would you rather be in? For me, I'd rather be in Joe Biden's shoes. The economy seems to be beginning to favor him and could go his way as we go through the rest of the year. These court cases of Trump are hanging around him and they're unknowns. As long as Biden can get consumer confidence up and people feeling a little bit better, which I think is doable, especially when you're raising records amounts of cash for those competitive states. I think I'd rather be standing in Joe Biden's shoes looking this far toward November.
That's precisely the way I feel. And we also ought to acknowledge that most people in our field don't seem to be feeling that way. They're leaning in the other direction because they're overly influenced by a glut of polls. and they say, oh, woe is Joe Biden. He can't possibly come back. No, it's ridiculous. Of course he can, despite everything, because there's more despite everything for Trump, and it's deadlier. So absolutely, I think he can come back, and I'm well aware that we all got 2016 wrong, which is what we all get the emails and tweets about.
We got 2020 right.
We got 2020 right. We didn't get 2016 right. I acknowledge that if there's ever a surprise, it can come with Donald Trump, but I will be with you. I think it looks better long-term for Biden, and the election is September to November 5th.
That's
late
right.
September to November 5th.
A lot of early voting, and that begins. And I just look at the cards in the hand. That's the way I say it, because I know I'm going to get all kinds of comments from Trump supporters that we're crazy and it's going to be a landslide.
Landslide. Oh, yes. Right. I get a lot of those.
But we've been around a long time. We've looked at these elections cycle after cycle, and I always equate it to the, what kind of hand are you holding? And the big cards to me seem to be going to Biden. I mean, what big cards is Donald Trump holding? And what does that mean for his campaign tone, which is going to have to, I think, be angry and fearful and conspiracy, and in an attempt to try to dissuade people from the reality that they might be feeling as the economy gets better.
Look, Trump is angry when things are going well for him.
True.
So, of course, he's going to be off the wall and, through the building throughout this campaign. And he's not going to like the way the polls may start shifting in mid to late summer. That if it happens, that's when it's going to happen. It's not going to happen in spring. People, first of all, are sick of politics. They really have had enough over the last 7 or 8 years. It's just been intense. So what happens will happen later. And of course, the trials, one in particular, I think, as long as Trump is found guilty, that's going to make a big difference for Biden and against Trump. So, loads of things can happen that we can't imagine. And who knows what's going to happen in the Middle East. And God forbid that we should be involved in it with troops. So there are lots of factors that could change this. But right now, I think more of the key factors are shifting to Biden's direction than to Trump's.
Dr. Larry Sabato, you're awesome. You're one of my heroes. Look up to you very, very much. And it's so great to be able to talk to you in person. I hope we can do this periodically throughout this election year.
You're very kind. I appreciate it, Jim, and you do a great job. And of course, I'm happy to come back with you if you want me. Now, I'm going downhill. I'm in my 70s, so don't make it too long from now.
You know what? I'm closer to 60 than 50 now, and I'm feeling that same.
Oh, come on! I don't. Well, you don't look it.
Oh, and you don't either. So
yeah, that's what I was fishing. That's the compliment I was fishing for. Thank you.
It worked.
All right.
Take care, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Jim. Take care. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Jim Heath Podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Please be sure to like the Jim Heath channel, subscribe, and check back for our next episode. Thank you for joining us.